That same year, as if in punishment for our sins, unknown tribes descended upon us. Only God knows who they are or from where they came. The armored soldiers of the Kievan Rus, weary from their relentless pursuit, press on as they track the mysterious forces that had clashed with them just a week prior. It had been desperate refugees fleeing the steppe who first brought the warning. They pleaded with the feuding princes of the Rus to set aside their rivalries and unite their armies against a godless horde of unimaginable power. Now, standing together on the banks of the Kalkar River, their banners proud and defiant, the Rus warriors finally behold their enigmatic enemy. These Mongols, who have already reduced the once mighty Islamic Khwarezmian Empire to smoldering ruins and driven its defeated king into the Caspian Sea, now venture northward under the command of Subutai and G. Their aim is to scout new lands and bring war to uncharted territories. On the banks of the Kalkar River, a young Kievan Rus prince named Danilo leads his forces into battle. In a bold and reckless charge through a storm of Mongol arrows, he breaks through their lines, slaying several of the enemy. But his valor comes at a cost. An enemy arrow pierces his chest. His allies ride desperately to his aid, but the Mongol horse archers, masters of maneuver, outflank them with precision. Chaos ensues as the Rus forces, weary and disorganized, are chased into a scattered retreat. Thousands are massacred, their bodies left strewn across the battlefield. The Mongols, victorious and efficient, ride through the silver fields of fallen Rus soldiers before turning eastward, vanishing as suddenly as they appeared. No word of them reaches the Rus again. Danilo and the few surviving princes, battered and bloodied, are left to return to their thrones, bearing the weight of their defeat and the grim memory of the unstoppable force they had faced. The Mongols' presence in these remote European lands has not gone unnoticed. Their exploits have been revealed, not to nameless wild tribes, but to the most powerful man in the world, Genghis Khan. Now, they undertake the arduous journey back to his court, carrying the knowledge of the lands and peoples they encountered. The Kievan Rus, founded in the 9th century, once stood as a mighty and united power at the eastern edge of Europe. Its strength was rooted in its unity, its flourishing trade routes, and its control of vast territories. However, over time, this unity began to crumble. Potent principalities emerged within its borders, and clans and aristocrats fanned the flames of internal rivalries. The once thriving trade routes dried up, leaving the Federation fractured and its power diminished. Instead of uniting against the knights and invading hordes beyond their borders, the lesser princes often turned their armies against one another. Despite this decline, some leaders sought to reclaim the golden age of the Kievan Rus. Among them was Roman the Great, who succeeded in unifying several regions and became the ruler of all Western Rus, primarily governing in the land known today as Ukraine. Yet his ambitions were cut short. Roman was slain in battle, leaving the Federation once again divided and vulnerable to the forces that would shape its history. Danilo, Roman the Great's son, stakes his claim to his father's lands, but manages to secure control over only a portion of them, ruling the western region of Halic Volhynia. 14 years after the bloody Battle of the Kalkar, a new wave of terror descends upon the eastern stretches of the Kievan Rus. In 1237, the Mongol Horde arrives at the gates of Ryazan, demanding its surrender. The people, defiant, refuse and fiercely repel the initial Mongol assaults. But their valor is short-lived. The relentless Mongol forces overwhelm them, leaving the city in ruins. Its prince falls alongside his people, and chroniclers later write that there was no one left to groan or cry in the devastated city. Although Genghis Khan had passed away a decade earlier, in 1227, his empire endured. His son, Ogdi, ascended to the throne and ordered the conquest of the Kievan Rus. This invasion is spearheaded by Batu Khan, Genghis's grandson, who leads the campaign alongside the empire's greatest generals, including the fearsome Subutai. Under their command, the Mongol onslaught sweeps across the land, marking the beginning of a new and harrowing chapter in the history of the Kievan Rus. The Mongols press westward, leaving a trail of destruction through the ancient principalities, slaughtering civilians without mercy, and then turning south to sack Crimea. In 1239, under ashen skies, Menka Khan and his forces ride toward their next conquest. Beyond their path, the domes of Kiev rise like closed flowers crowned by simple crosses. Below, the bustling streets are filled with peasants, moving through their creaking hovels, while carts and cattle trundle along the pathways. Struck by the distant beauty of Kiev, Menka Khan voices a desire to spare the city, provided its people surrender without resistance. Yet, Grand Prince Mikhail of Chernihiv dismisses the offer and abandons the city, fleeing to safety. With his terms rebuffed, Menka Khan chooses to lead his forces elsewhere, either to rest or pursue new campaigns. As time passes, Danilo sees an opportunity to assert his influence over Kiev. He installs his vassal, Dimitro, as the city's ruler. But the reprieve is short-lived. A year later, as the rivers freeze and winter tightens its grip, the ominous sound of the Mongol horde echoes once again, rattling the gates of Kiev. The city, poised on the edge of ruin, braces for its inevitable fate. Batad Khan established his camp outside the city of Kiev, the air filled with an overwhelming cacophony of screeching carts, bleeding camels, and the neighing of countless horses. The land of the Rus swarmed with soldiers as Chinese engineers advanced formidable siege engines, unleashing destruction on Kiev's timber walls. Towering stones rained down, crushing homes, towers, and people alike. After days of bombardment, the Mongols breached the city walls. The defenders of Kiev rushed to the ramparts, managing to kill the first waves of invaders. But the sheer might of the Mongol forces soon overwhelmed them. The Mongols surged into the city, leaving a trail of flames and devastation. In desperation, civilians fled to the Church of the Tithes, barricading themselves within and gathering around the altar. As the Mongols stormed the church, frantic survivors crowded onto the strained balconies, which ultimately gave way, causing the structure to collapse and bury hundreds beneath its rubble. With Kiev's fall, the last remnants of the Kievan Rus were extinguished, leaving the lands to the west exposed. Batad Khan and Subutai now set their sights on Central Europe, preparing to face the forces of Poland, Hungary, Germany, and the Knights Templar, scattering them in the chaos of battle. Prince Danilo, meanwhile, received news that his wife and children had survived the Mongol invasion and fled to Poland. In an emotional reunion by the River Polka, he found them safe but warned them of the continued danger, urging them to move to safety. He then departed to assess the devastation in his own cities. Arriving in Berestya with his brother, Danilo was overwhelmed by the stench of countless decaying bodies, unable to traverse the field of the dead. In Volodymyr, he found no survivors. Every church, including the Church of the Blessed Virgin, was filled with the remains of the slaughtered. Despite the Mongol conquest, regional conflicts persisted. Danilo and the other princes continued their alliances and feuds, clashing with Poles and Lithuanians in the volatile borderlands. However, the shadow of Mongol domination loomed over all. Defeated princes and governors were required to seek Batad Khan's approval to govern their lands as vassals, bound to pay tribute in the form of taxes, soldiers, and laborers. In 1246, Mikhail of Chernihiv appeared at Batad Khan's court to secure his position. Though he bowed in submission to Batad, he refused to bow to the Mongol icons or honor Genghis Khan, proclaiming, "We bow to you and pay you homage, but we will not worship in the faith of your ancestors." His defiance stood as a rare, solemn act of resistance amid the overwhelming subjugation of the Rus. Mikhail of Chernihiv's defiance is met with brutal retribution. Refusing Batad Khan's order, which he deemed blasphemy, Mikhail boldly declared, "We will not obey this order of yours, which is blasphemy in the eyes of God." Enraged, Batad ordered both Mikhail and his grandson to be stabbed to death. Mikhail would later be venerated as a martyr and canonized as a saint. Prince Danilo, long pursued by Batad Khan's forces, is also summoned to the Mongol court. Before departing, He seeks the solemn guidance of monks in prayer. During their meeting, Badu and Danilo negotiate a prisoner exchange. As a gesture, Badu offers Danilo a cup of mare's milk. Danilo hesitates, confessing he had never tasted it, but offers to drink it if Badu so wishes. Badu replies with a sly remark. Danilo is already one of them, a Mongol, and should drink their beverage. Despite this exchange, Danilo's true intent is clear. He seeks to undermine the Mongols at every turn. In the years that follow, Danilo strengthens alliances with Poland and Hungary and seeks Western support against the Mongols. He appeals to Pope Innocent IV, urging the Pontiff to extend Roman authority to his lands and mobilize a crusade. While Danilo receives only a papal title and crown, becoming king of Ruthenia, he and his family resolve to reclaim their homeland. In the winter of 1254, Danilo and his sons launch a bold campaign. Riding from town to town, they spare civilians but dismantle Mongol rule wherever they go. This defiant campaign disrupts Mongol loyalists among the Rus and draws the ire of the Horde. By 1257, Mongol General Karemza marshals an army to crush the insurrection, moving to retake the city of Volodymyr. Long burdened by the memory of their slaughtered kin, the men of Volodymyr rise with fierce determination. They surge from the city gates in a horseless charge, their shields braced and spears poised. On the amber fields, they pierce their enemies and strike them down with wild fury. The Mongols scatter in disarray, pursued relentlessly by Danilo's forces. Karemza, humiliated, redirects his wrath toward the defenseless city of Luk, determined to make an example of its people. The conflict escalates, as Danilo's defiance fans the flames of rebellion against Mongol dominance. Arriving at a frigid, roaring river, General Karemza is met with defiance. The people of Luk rush out, severing the bridge before him, cutting off his advance. Frustrated and unable to cross, Karemza abandons the siege, retreating to the steppe with his forces. Though victorious for now king, Danilo's plans to retake Kiev are thwarted as the Mongols return with larger armies and more capable commanders. They offer cities the grim ultimatum of total annihilation if they resist and demand the dismantling of Danilo's fortifications. Forced to seek refuge, Danilo watches as his brother Vasilko concedes to the Mongols' terms. The military campaign to repel the invaders comes to an end, but Danilo remains unyielding in spirit. Over the years, he rebuilds and expands his realm beyond the lands once ruled by his father. Though technically vassals of the Mongol Empire, Danilo of Halic Volhynia and his subjects, Ukrainians, Hungarians, Poles, and others, preserve a remarkable degree of autonomy under Mongol rule. Their defiance is indomitable, a spirit that outlives Danilo himself, who dies in 1264. The Mongols, for all their might, foresee the immense difficulty of conquering and holding these lands. Ogedei Khan's brother, Chagatai, had long warned him about the people at the edge of the world. They are a hard people. When angered, they would sooner die by their own swords than bow in submission. As Danilo's legacy endures, so too does the untamable spirit of his people, a testament to their resilience in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds.